Good evening. How you doing, my maximized manhood brothers? This is Minister Peyton Moore coming at you. I miss you guys. Mike Jones, Michael Young, Anthony Brunell, Anthony YG, Brother Jerry, Xavier, and my man Big Jeff. I miss you guys. I miss you guys dearly. So y'all know that we're on our book, our Communication, Sex, and Money book. So we're on chapter 15. I just like to do this video just in case there's something that you didn't understand or something that you missed. So I just want to continue to do videos for you on this, and we'll continue to do this until we get back into our space, man. We got to get back to our blessings, man. So we're on chapter 15, which is page 143. And this is a wonderful book that was done by Ed Cole. Really enjoying it. And chapter 15 is where we're talking about the giving and receiving, And it goes on to say from the time Jim married, his wife handled the checkbooks. She paid the bills. She even tried to balance the budget. But when the checkbook was not balanced anymore, things kind of got out of hand, and I guess they was running short, probably overspending, and she got a job to make up the difference. During the period of months after she went to work, their bills was paid and they was able to start a savings account, but that was a problem. They both was thrilled that they could start a savings account, but then that was a problem. She was in fear because, that was something that she was kind of like knew that they was overspending, and Jim was kind of like this controlling person. So even if she spent $5 or more on necessary things like groceries, Jim would find fault on her. And he would use these humorous things and say to her, like, you keep the books in line and I'll keep you in line. Well, you just don't do that. You just need to sit down and discuss some things that may be affecting you both, and it's some overspending going on, but you can't tell your wife that, and a wife, you can't tell your husband that. So Jim decided to do this. Since he's arrogant, he's going to show her who's the boss. So Jim decided to go out and buy a new pickup truck with a trailer with a boat on it. Oh, man. And his wife was like, well, whose is that? And he stated with his prideful, arrogant attitude, basically what he's saying, I can do what I want to do, but you can't do what you want to do. Even though that they was having some conflicts with money spending. So she knew his decisions was made without consulting with her, that's something that you just don't do. I mean, something to that magnitude, you just don't go out and buy a new car and a boat or a truck without you and your wife sitting down talking about it to see if that's going to fit in the budget. Now, I know sometimes you want to surprise your wife, or wife want to surprise their husband, or evidently if they do that, then that means that they done saved up the money to buy that or do that. But there are some decisions that you just don't make when you know that you're already having some conflicts and you're already having some money issues. You just don't do things just because your pride kick you up a notch to go do it just because you can. So she was trying to figure out, basically, she's the one that bounced out the checkbook. So how could they afford this? So guess what? Jim blamed her. And Jim came home one Monday and found a note that her and the children were gone and they wasn't returning. He was furious. He blamed her for everything, never once thinking that that what he'd done hurt her, which led to this decision for her to leave. Because Jim was just a foolish man. And he said he had faith in God, but never acted as if he had faith with his wife. So you can't have faith with God and not have faith with your wife. You can't have faith with your wife and not have faith in God. So that's just the way it goes. Love for God is evidenced by loving others. Faith in God is often exhibited by faith in others. You must trust someone. At heart, Jim was very selfish. Jim was a very selfish person to go out and buy something that he knew that they couldn't afford, but you're going to demean her, and she's the one trying to keep up with the books, but every time she do something, it's her fault, but when you do it, it's okay. No, man, it's not okay. Okay, that was a story in the Bible about Nabal and David. Nabal and David. And you see, Nabal was a fool. You know, David is the one that protected his family and his flocks. David sent for offering. David sent for an offering, and Nabal denied that he even knew David. But he refused that he even knew anything about David. So Nabal's wife, Abigail, who later on became David's wife, knew David and what he had done to protect them and their possessions from the enemy. So when she heard about what her husband did by refusing to know about David, or even just refusing knowing him, and he refused to send an offering, she prepared it herself and took it to David. See, hers was righteous. She had a righteous act. She done it in faith, and she had great gratitude when she done it. And when Nabal learned that she had done it, his heart turned to stone, and later he died. And guess who married Abigail? David. So men, be careful. Don't play those kind of games. You know, don't refuse that if your friend needs something, I mean a true friend that has looked out for you and been there for you and protected you in positive ways, and then when somebody come asks you something about him, you deny that you know him. Oh, let's see who did that. Oh, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Wow. Judas betrayed Jesus. Wow. But they knew him. So see how this story going to the New Testament? You see, we have many neighbors of the world, men who refuse to tithe and claim they don't know God. You just refuse to tithe. That what they have has become in their own efforts. So you feel that everything that you have gained, you have done it through your own efforts, and God is nowhere in it. So you have a problem with even tithing, you know? So you wonder why you're going through things. So when you tithe, you're not only helping the church, you're helping many people in many ways. We know that there are pastors out there that take advantage of certain things, but once you tithe, that responsibility now going to fall on that pastor. He's the one going to be judged by that. And there are many ways. There are many other ways you can tithe. And if you can tithe over and abundantly, you can do that. It goes on to say on page 145, women married to such men who must make up the family tithe from whatever money they have because their husband is selfish, he's self-centered, he has an attitude toward God. So we have a lot of Abigails of the world, but we also have a lot of Nabals of the world. So it goes on to say, unlike these men have not lied, but you start putting other possessions before God, like cars, your job, the business. And they go right on rejecting the truth that their arrogancy and their unbelieving attitude caused the problem. The arrogancy and your unbelieving attitude has caused the problem. Because you didn't put God on, you forgot about him. You think it's all about you. So you know what? The Bible talks about tithing. Tithing is necessary, whether you believe in it or not, because it is only for those who tithe that God promises to rebuke the devourer. Oh, man. Let me read that again. Tithing is necessary, whether you believe it or not, because it is only for those who tithe that God promises to rebuke and devour. Wow, that's very powerful there. God will be the debtor to no man. Men cannot outgive God. You can't outgive God. You can't, I don't care how many billions or trillions of dollars you got. You cannot give God. Giving to God without his giving more in return would essentially make God a debtor to the giver. That can't be done. God doesn't always give back the way men do. God don't always give back the way men do. So you got to look at that. When you're tithing and obeying him, God will give you a good health report. He will help you out on that doctor bill. That doctor bill won't devour your income. He will give you favor by buying a car instead of buying a lemon. He'll keep you constantly out of debt. God's favor enable you to come through difficult times in marriage. So there's no divorce or no alimony or child support. When you tithe and be obedient to God, when you have a relationship with him and you follow his commandments to the best of your knowledge, this is what God will do for you. God will bless you and have favor on you, and you can also have better things, better relationships in your life. But you have to put God first. You see, men who refuse to put God first always have big problems. Others have thanked God for his bountiful blessings, and their delight in the Lord is revealed in their generosity toward ministry. Now, there are some men, they may not go to church, but they're going to send their tithe and offering. They're going to send their tithe and offering. And somehow God blessed them. And then one day they will get up and go to church. And the pastor's going to be like, it's one thing about him. He sent his tithe and offering. And I have members right here. You ain't paying, you ain't putting in a nickel. So you got people like that. Tithing a portion to God from what he has provided for you is basic to financial health. Tithing is an open, visible, external evidence of dependence on and faith in God. It is the school of faith. Tithing is just the first grade of it. Faith in God has two visible areas. Physical evidence. One is the healing of the body, and the other is the use of money. Faith in God has two physical evidences. One is healing of the body, and the other is the use of money. Now, we know that Jesus went often to the temple to worship, right? Okay. While there, he oftentimes sit over against and watched how people cast their money. See, a lot of people didn't know that Jesus done that. He commended a widow who only threw 2 mites and said she had given more than any other because she cast all she had. Now, there are people that can give, but then they stench back. You know? And then there are people that don't have a lot and just seem like they're the one that's pouring their hearts out because they don't mind helping a ministry. And you trying to figure out, well, how's God blessing them? I make this amount, but I give this amount. How come I'm not getting the best? She only give $100 a month versus my $1,000 a month. It seems like she just being blessed or he being blessed. Well, because first of all, you're not giving from the heart. You're just doing it for a show. Okay? You can tell a man's character better by his use of money than by his way of worship. You can tell a man's character better by his use of money than by his way of worship. Okay. Zacchaeus, y'all remember that? He's the tax man. He stole money from people illegally. But he had an encounter with Jesus Christ. So everybody that he stole from, he gave back to them. It goes on to say Zacchaeus showed his faith by his willingness to take the riches he had stolen illegally, immorally, and give them back to God, and by giving them back to the poor people. That's what he did. That was a physical evidence of the eternal work of faith in the life of Zacchaeus, and was shown by the use of his money. So as a tax collector, he cheated a lot of people. But when he had that encounter with Jesus Christ, hey, it was all good. He knew what he had to do to get back in that relationship, with Jesus Christ. You had Ananias and Sapphira. They were reserving something for themselves in case of failure. Their unbelief and lack of faith was shown in their use of money. Moral cowardice was their undoing. Moral cowardice caters to the carnal at the expense of the holy. Moral cowardice caters to the carnal at the expense of the holy. So, moral cowardice is a bane to manhood. It's a plague, it's a death, it's a pain. It can cause destruction to manhood. Covetousness is a curse to manhood. Being Christ-like in your manhood requires a generous spirit. It requires you to have a generous spirit. Covetousness is a form of idolatry. You want what somebody else has, because it is the worship of only self, me, myself, and I. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. Giving and receiving, it requires wisdom and it requires a strategy. Here's a man named Hank. He was extremely successful in this business for 10 years, but he struggled. He was in the real estate. He was a broker. He had experienced the favor of God in his life. He had financial prosperity above and beyond his peers. Then he made a mistake that cost him dearly because of the lack of wisdom. So you got to have wisdom. He made an error in the God-given strategy he had been following. Hank was to learn what the scripture means when it says, "For if you wander beyond the teaching of Christ, you will leave God behind." There are people, they wander beyond Christ. They wander beyond the teaching, and they leave Christ behind, and then they become self-centered. Okay? Believing that God wanted him to prosper, he had begun to practice seed faith, giving. Each financial increase enabled him to give more seed. So he making money, so he giving more seed. He enjoyed the benefits of the blessing. He began to travel and do some things that he had never experienced, entertaining his friends. He was generous with God and generous with others in giving both time and money. But in his belief, all he had to do was exercise his seed faith. He thought that's what it was all about. Enjoying. Oh, taking my friends here, taking my friends there, doing this, doing that. But guess what? He skipped days at the office and did not make sales. He got lazy. He didn't pound the pavement anymore. He wasn't making the phone calls. He wasn't accepting messages. He wasn't doing the job that he once had the passion for, because the more money he made, the more lazy he got. He got comfortable. And that's what he had got. He had gotten comfortable. Page 148. Hank was guilty of dealing with the slack hand. He had got comfortable. He made some errors here. Error oftentimes is nothing but truth carried to the extreme. He carried it to the extreme. Sometimes you can take truth and carry it to the extreme. It's just like the Bible. The Bible is already written. The Bible is already facts. You don't have to take it to the extreme. You don't have to start creating your doctrine with it and just overtake it. Like you have men that does the laws, the 613 laws, they just take it to the extreme. But they take it to the extreme to satisfy themselves. Okay? So he got lazy. He didn't want to get back into the game. So we're going to take a break there, and we're going to pick back up, and we're going to talk about some things that we can do that will help us. I'll end it off with this. It says, God always gives a strategy for victory. God's wisdom is the strategy. His glory is the victory. Men pray for victory, and God gives strategy. And we're going to get back into part 2 of that. I hope you all enjoy that. Thank you very much. Let's get ready for part 2.